Hi folks, this is Meredith from the Papery Craftery, and today I am going to be sharing a quick video. I am going over 5 of the most frequently asked questions that I receive on my website or here on my YouTube channel. The first thing we're going to tackle is how to get your coils to lay flatter after you take them off of your tool. And what I normally start with is by choosing a paper that's a little bit thicker, especially if you're a beginner. The first paper I showed there was a little bit thinner. That is made by Craft Harbor Paper, which I show a lot on my page. I like their paper, but it's definitely on the thinner side. What I'm showing now is from Quilled Creations, which has a bit more of a thicker weight to it. Thicker papers do tend to lay a little bit flatter in my experience. The next piece of advice I give is to choose your tools carefully. I do think that most beginners start off with a slotted tool like I'm using here. And the key to using a slotted tool and getting your curls to stay flat is to just roll them slowly. It's very easy to kind of just keep flicking through your turns, and once your paper kind of gets off center, it's just going to keep going and your middle is going to kind of pop out like a spring. If you are using a needle tool, I would look for one with a flat base like I'm showing here. This one has a flat base even though it's a long slotted tool. This one does not have a flat base. You can see it kind of goes indented there. And the reason that I like a needle tool with a base is that you can push your curl down as you're turning it to make sure that everything stays in line. It's a little bit easier to get off track when you're using a needle tool. You can see my center is already popping out there a little bit. So after every few turns, I kind of push it down to the base and get everything to line back up again. And then once I take it off my tool, you can see that my center isn't going to pop out. It lays pretty flat there, all in one level. Another option is to use a tool called a curling coach. I, a long time ago, made a demonstration, kind of a review of this tool on my website, and I will link to that down in the description box because it has a lot more information than I'm going to give here. And honestly, I haven't touched it since, so I'm not really using it to its full advantage here and showing exactly what the purpose is, but you kind of hold it in one hand and it gives you a much wider base to roll your quilling up against, especially when your strips are getting very, very long. It just gives you more of a surface area to quill against. It's kind of awkward. Again, just read my full review, but it's only a few dollars, so if you think it's something that you could use, by all means, go ahead and pick one up. It does have its pros and cons, but if you like quilling against, a flat surface, that might be a tool for you. The next question I get asked all the time about quilling is how to keep the center of my quilling shapes looking nice and neat. And I think the easiest way to do that is simply by holding the center in place while you make your shapes. So to be more clear, you're going to roll your shape, you're going to take it off your tool, open it up, and glue the end. And for this demo, first I'm going to be making a teardrop shape. So I'm going to be pinching one side, but I want that center still to be in the center. I don't want it pushing off over to the other side. So I hold it in place. And then I pinch right where I glued the end. And that right there is where I glued the end. That is going to keep the center in place, but also hide where I glued. It kind of just disappears into the pinch. So right there, I have the center still right in the middle of the shape. It doesn't get smushed off to one side and look all uneven. Let's say I want to pinch the other side and make it into a marquee. I just hold the center in place again and pinch the other side, and then you can still see that nice circle in the middle. I can even curve it. It stays in place the whole time because I held it while I pinched. Moving on to number 3 in the frequently asked questions about quilling is, do I really need a cork workboard? Of course you do not really need a cork workboard, but it's going to come in very, very handy. The one I use the most is this big one here, and that is from Quilled Creations. It does have a quilling guide on the other side where you can put in your coils and let them stretch out. I honestly never use that. I've just never been good at it. You just flip it over though, you use the entire cork side, put your wax paper down, pin it in place, and you're good to go. You could use it for a template. I've done that many, many times on this channel. You could use it without a template. Even if you're doing 3D quillings, you might need to put them down someplace. You can put them on your workboard and that way they won't stick to anything. Here's some other ones I have. This is just an old, this came with my very first quilling set in like 2010 or so. These ones are just very, very thin pieces. I think they were actually for like a cork board that you would pin stuff on. But in a pinch, when I've run out of room on my other boards, I've stacked them up together and with wax paper on top and used pins so they go through all the levels. That has worked too. If you don't have any of those options, try finding a thicker weighted corrugated cardboard box and cutting a piece off of that. It'll definitely work in a pinch to hold your pins. Going along with this whole subject of the cork boards, I've had a lot of people ask all of a sudden about wax paper versus parchment paper. I use wax paper. I buy it at honestly the dollar store and it lasts me forever because you can reuse it. Wax paper has a lot more of a slick surface. Parchment paper, at least the one I use, has a bit of a slicker surface, but I don't think that it would repel the glue as much as the wax paper would. I know some people have had luck with it, but honestly, I would stick with the wax paper. The next thing I still get asked all the time is about what kind of glues I use for my quilling. I made a really long post about this, or a video, and I'll link to that above, but the one I use most of all is Elmer's glue. Every once in a while some Mod Podge, tacky glue. I do also use some clear glue every once in a while. But my tried and true is Elmer's Glue All. I buy these 16-ounce bottles and then I use those to fill up my little needle-nosed bottles that I link to pretty much every post I make at this point. I really like these ones because I like that little cap is attached to the bottle so you don't lose it, because these pretty much stop working once you lose that cap. And then to fill them up, I get questions about this every once in a while. When I fill up these bottles, I don't think my set, I got a whole bunch at once and I've had them for a long time. I don't think they came with a funnel. I've heard some people say they use a funnel. I would assume that gets pretty full pretty quickly. I just squeeze it from the top and that's it. Go slowly, it doesn't make that much of a mess. Every once in a while you get a bubble, but you know, if you spill your glue, you clean it up. It's not the end of the world. And then the cap screws right back on. You just want to make sure that you leave that little topper on so that the needle doesn't get clogged. But that's it. They're wonderful. I love these little bottles so much. The last question I want to answer that I get all the time is about sealing your quilling. The only time I seal my quilling is when I'm making ornaments and I just use a little Mod Podge. I always recommend reading the site Honey's Quilling because she has done extensive research into sealant, and I will link to that as well. If you are a beginner quiller and you have a question about how to make a specific shape, you might want to visit my website, the Papery Craftery. Right from the home page, you can scroll down a bit and click on Quilling Basics, and I have an entire page here of just some basic shapes and how to start, how to frame, how to make squares, stuff I haven't covered here on the YouTube channel as of yet. I might do a series at some point, but there's some good information there. If there's a question about basic quilling that I haven't answered, and any other questions you might have about quilling, feel free to leave a comment on any video. I try to answer every single one as soon as I can. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.